Okay, in this next part, I was just busy talking to my daughter Mila about 3D, and she was writing down all of the really cool words that we use when we use this program. So she's maybe a young animator. Maybe she'll make movies when she is getting better and better at this kind of stuff. So, all right. With that said, we're going to go ahead and fade this 3D out. So we want to go to over here to the Materials panel, and we have the Materials panel here, and you want your 3D selected. You have to have your 3D selected, otherwise you won't see the settings. So I can see right here it says 3D matte, and there it is. Okay, so the 3D is here. The lights spin out, and after the lights spin out, that's when I'm going to want it to go ahead and start fading out. So for me, I'm going to say where it's done is over here with the factor slider. So factor. You want to come here to the Materials panel, and up at the top here, this is the factor slider that controls how much transparency we have here. So remember that our factor slider is set to 1, which means 100%. And that means that it's, right now, we have no transparency on it. That's why it's a solid object. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keyframe this. So I'm going to put my mouse pointer over it. I'm going to press I, and it inserts a keyframe, and it's yellow. And that's great. Then I'm going to go ahead and figure out, okay, how long do I want it to last? So maybe I'll do, it's going to fade out over 50 frames. We'll see what that is. And then I'm going to lower the factor, and you'll see as I lower it, you'll see that the 3D is starting to become see-through. And of course, if I bring it down to 0, it's gone in the entire scene. So I need to keyframe that change, so I'll put my mouse pointer over the factor slider, press I, and it goes gold. So here we are, it's through our entire scene. There it is, the 3D comes down. It's got here, and it's got 50 frames to fade out. So remember, we're at 30 frames per second. So if I'm giving this object 50 frames to do something, I'm giving it a little less than 2 seconds to do its action. So I maybe want to increase that to at least 60 frames so that it's got 2 seconds to do it. So I'm looking at the dope sheet here, and here's my 3D right here, and here is the end where it fades out. So I think I'm going to go ahead and press G, grab it. I'm going to go ahead and give it some more time to do it. So that way it's a little bit more of a subtle effect. It's a little slower, and of course the viewer can see it on screen. So you play around with that. Again, use your best judgment. Maybe do what the dope sheet says, and then if you don't like it, you want to improve upon it, by all means, take artistic license and go ahead and do that. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and model those 3 cylinders because we are on the last step of this animation. I can close this up. Okay, so I'm going to get back to frame 1, always a good idea. I'm going to do Shift-C, and I'm going to go ahead and get my cursor to the center of the world. I'm going to do Shift-A, and I'm going to say, I'm going to do Add Mesh, and I'm going to bring in a cylinder. Cylinder comes in, and it is huge, so I'm going to go ahead and you could do this in edit mode, but you can also do this in object mode. So I think I'm going to just go ahead and I'll do it in edit mode. So I'm going to press Tab, get into edit mode. You can see that the entire object is selected because it's orange here. I'm then going to go ahead and press S to scale it down. So S to scale, so there's scale. And I'm going to make it kind of what I think it should be. So that's about the diameter that I want, but it's not the height that I want. So I'm going to increase the height. You can scale the height. So I'm going to press S for scale, Z for the Z-axis, and I'm going to go ahead and scale it up until I think it's an appropriate size. And I'm kind of looking over here in my camera view just so you guys can see. I'm going to tab out of edit mode, and I'm going to go ahead now and advance my 3D, and I'm just going to compare the size of the cylinder to the 3D. So you can see that the cylinder is a little bit taller than 3D. That's good. That's what I want. And I think that I've kind of found the size of the cylinder that I want. So if the cylinder is in the right size, just tab back into edit mode, play with the scale, scale it down, scale up the z-axis, get it to the right size, and I think you'll be good to go. Okay, let's go ahead and rename this object, and then we'll go ahead and give it a color. So I'm going to change this here. This is going to be my, we're going to do the red cylinder first, so this is going to be, cylinder X. So this is going to be called cylinder X. I'm going to come here to the materials panel, click on new. I'm going to go ahead and give this a material here, so I'll call this, I'm going to abbreviate here, and I'm going to call it Sil X Matte. And I'm going to go ahead and, again, I have to think about what action now, what's going to need to happen to this particular object. I don't want it to be reflective, so I don't need a glossy shader. I need it to have a diffuse shader because I want it to be a solid color. But I also want it, I want it to be able to fade in. And so I'm going to need a transparency shader. So over here under surface, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to choose mix shader. And when I do a mix shader, I'm going to go ahead and set my first shader as transparent like we've done. And my second shader is going to be the diffuse shader right here. So you can hear that noise, that's my dog. For the diffuse color, I'm going to go ahead and make this bright red because it is my x-axis, and I'll rotate it in just a moment. And then I'm just going to make sure, okay, so you can see, and I'm going to make sure that the factor is now set to, that it's set to 1. Okay, so there we are there. Okay, so now I need to rotate, I need to flip this cylinder so that it's rotated and it's lying on the x-axis. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press R, and I'm going to press Y, and then I'm going to type in 90 degrees, and then I'm going to left click, and then I'll tab out of edit mode. So now you can see this cylinder here is in fact now lying down on the x-axis. Let me go ahead and I just want to see where the cylinder is compared to the 3D. You can see that the cylinder on mine, the cylinder is actually behind the 3D, and I don't want that. I want the cylinder to actually be where the 3D shows up. So I'm going to go ahead and find where the 3D comes to rest. I'm going to go ahead and move my cylinder so it's like right in the middle of the 3D. You can see it's going right through there, and you can see how it's going through here. And you'll understand why in just a little bit. So there's my 3D, there's the red cylinder, and there we are. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and save right now and do a quick pause. I'm back. So now what we're going to do is we're going to model the other two cylinders, the Y cylinder and the Z cylinder, and we're going to duplicate it off of the X cylinder so we can save time. So I'm on frame 1. Again, I don't want to mess with any animation right now. I'm going to take the red cylinder, that's called cylinder X. I'm going to then do Shift D to duplicate it, and then I'm going to left click my mouse to place it right here. So it's exactly on top of the first cylinder, and you can't even see it. But what you can do is over here on the outliner view, you can see that I have the two cylinders, and because this was a duplicate, it has the same name, and it has the .001. So I'm going to double click the name, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this. I'm going to call it cylinder Y. So now at least I can select it, and there we go. Okay, first things first, I'm going to rotate it in the Y-axis. So I'm going to press Tab to get into edit mode. I'm going to press R to rotate it, and then I'm going to figure out what axis do I want to rotate it on. And so I want to rotate it on the Z-axis. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees on the Z-axis. I'm going to left click to accept it, and then I'm going to, and then I'm now ready for the color. So I'm going to come over here to the material panel, and it already has my material from my red one. That's because I duplicated this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a new material, and I'll show you how easy this is. So over here on the right hand side, you want to click on this little plus button here, and that adds in a new material slot. You then want to add a new material in that new material slot. We then want to give this a name, and I'm going to call this Sil Y Matte. And there we go. So there it is there. You'll notice that I've named it, but you don't see it actually happening over here yet. Okay, so I'm going to set up my settings. The reason why you don't see it happening over here is I have to actually hit the assign button. And when I hit assign, now you'll see in my camera view it turned white, and over here it turned white. So it's now taking on these settings. So I want to do the exact same settings. So I'm going to change my first shader to a mix shader. I'm going to set the first one to transparent. I'm going to set the second one to diffuse. And my diffuse color is going to be set to green because I'm doing that. And I'm going to make sure that the factor slider is set to a value of 1 or 100%, so that way I fully see it. Okay, I'm still in edit mode on this cylinder, so I need to press tab and get out of it, and I'm going to save. Okay, last cylinder, and we're almost done with this whole project. Yippee. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this green cylinder. I'm going to do Shift D to duplicate it. I'm going to left click to accept. I'm then going to come up here into the outliner view. I'm going to double click. I'm going to rename this as Cylinder Z. I'm then going to tab into edit mode on Cylinder Z. I'm then going to rotate it. I'm going to rotate it on the x-axis. I'm going to type in 90 degrees. Left click to accept, and you can see that now it's there. And because I'm doing all of this work at the center of the world at 0, 0, 0, it's going to come in, very nicely here. It's looking very good. Okay, so that's it. Now I'm going to go ahead and give it a new material. So I'm going to click on the little plus button, hit new, give it a name, call it Sil Z Matte. I'm going to change it to a mix shader like I did on the other ones. The first shader is going to be transparent, so I can make it fade in and fade out if I need to, and make it a diffuse. I'm going to change the color to a blue, and then you'll notice that it hasn't happened yet, and that's because of this move here. I have to click on Assign. Okay. Okay. Now to actually be able to see it over here, I'm going to change the factor. Factor has to be brought up to 100%. If I set it to 0, it's not there. Okay, there we go. I'll hit Assign just to make sure. And last but not least, I'll tab out of edit mode. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and save. Okay. I think I'm going to go ahead and pause this. I'll cut this recording here. And then in the very last part, we will go ahead and animate these, and then you will be done with your project. So I will see you in the next and final movie. See you then.